stipulates. This is not unique to Elyria. Right now, when I looked at the contracts, because I did receive contracts from all of your surrounding municipalities, and spent some time on the telephone with the secretaries who do all the work, Cuyahoga Falls, Springfield, and Lorraine have some sort of methodology where they do not use the 2,912 or the 2,928 hours. They do use something different. Most of them are at 2,600, and I believe Lorraine's at 2,080 as well. So there are a couple folks in your neighborhood that do the same methodology. Okay, bonus pay. The Elyria contract has a variety of areas in which individuals receive a bonus for achieving some sorts of certification. This is not uncommon in fire departments. I typically see it more on if I'm a firefighter EMT versus a firefighter paramedic, there may be some sort of bonus structure. You have a combination of bonus structures where either they are given to a person and then kind of divided out between all the pay periods, which longevity is. There are other bonuses that are given out at 1 or 2 times during the year. According to the Fair Labor Standards Act, if there's any prior contract, agreement, or promise, that bonus time must be used in the overtime calculation, which is going to make it very, very difficult because there's different methodologies to determine what that amount is going to be, depending upon whether or not it's spread out throughout the year. And I did look at the auditor's payroll last week Thursday, and when it comes to longevity and that, they are calculating it exactly correctly. They're doing a great job. But we need to look at the fact that there are other bonuses pay that does need to be included at some point in time throughout the year. They're very difficult payroll calculations. I have given in the administrative report some examples to them, and obviously that's something that we're going to need to work on. So therefore, all bonuses need to be included. There is something, too, which the private sector does not have, which the public sector is allowed to do, and that's called comp time, which means I can take time off in lieu of pay at time and 1/2. I did see comp time as a code on the auditor's reports. I did see their hours being used for comp time. I would highly, highly, highly recommend at this point in time you discontinue any type of comp time provisions until you have a very thorough policy, because that, again, there are FLSA implications to that depending upon when you take it, how much comp time is truly there. So it is not illegal to have comp time in the public sector. It is in the private sector. I would say, however, that until you get a very solid citywide policy on what you're doing with comp time, that you cease that practice. So therefore, what are we recommending? Obviously, we need to negotiate how overtime is calculated within the 28-day cycle. This is going to be a tough negotiations process, but it's also a very, it has a lot of fiscal ramifications to it. We need to go back to pay being determined by $2,928, 20 hours a year. You're mixing a 40-hour versus a 7K exemption, and it's just not working. And you need to be consistent in how you calculate your hourly pay and thus your overtime. We need to look at Kelly days and restructure them to the way that they were supposed to be, and that is a specific designated time off within a pay cycle in order to mitigate or to reduce overtime exposure. I did not see, and I didn't really inquire about it, but I did notice that the amount of overtime given is very interesting. It doesn't look like there is some sort of mechanism in which we determine who receives overtime, because overtime was anything from as little as a couple of hours to a lot of hours. That would lead me to believe that it's the shift commander's choice of personnel. Typically what we've done in contracts with fire departments is we look at establishing some sort of seniority schedule. The top person on the list is the one that's called. If they refuse, they go to the bottom of the list. But at least that way it more equitably distributes overtime to all personnel. And there's always those that don't want it. There's always those that will take anything they can get. And this just kind of levels the playing field a little bit. And obviously we need to look at the bonus and longevity. Before everybody gets the hyperbaric, I am recommending that we eliminate, if not longevity and bonus pay, at least the bonus pay. I think it really will clean up payroll a lot better than having to worry about all the different types of overtime calculations. With that being said, and before the fire department thoroughly stones me, is that we do need to look at base compensation. This was not a compensation study. However, since I did have the contracts of the surrounding municipalities, I did look at compensation. When we look at Elyria's base salary, without any types of overtime or bonus calculations or longevity payments, overall, Elyria's base salary is less than its comparables. In some cases, some that we really would need to be looked at. In other cases, it's slightly off. But if there is an issue, in my opinion, when you're looking at the base salary of Elyria firefighters in comparison to those municipalities surrounding it. If there was anybody in the schedule who was on not on 2008 rate of pay, because there was one community that had not settled yet, we took that average out. I did use what I normally use in compensation, and that is when I determine the average of the market, I took out those salaries that were extremely high or extremely low as to not to skew the average. And instead we look at, within a statistical framework, what salaries meet that criteria. When Elyria adds all of its bonus pay, and when we look at total compensation, then Elyria flips. At the same point in time, Elyria's salary for total compensation is at or slightly above the market. Now we need to be cautious when we look at that, because not everybody has all of those bonus pays. Okay. So this is, again, just looking at an average. But it does tell me that, now that I've kind of taken money away when it comes to overtime, we do need to seriously look at the base compensation, and maybe there's some adjustment that should or could be made within that area, which is one of the reasons why I'm saying eliminate the bonus pay, try to somehow incorporate that in your base in order to get your base salary up better and closer to market. Longevity, I'm just going to kind of run through the rest of the benefits that they have. The administrative manual does have every department that I looked at and the exact calculations of how they do all of these benefits, so therefore my recommendations are not made on a whim. They are made on looking at from both a, if I were to negotiate the contract, what would the comparables tell me it should be, as well as from the fact that if I'm going to be the city, where should my position lie? It's just not my opinion. First thing when it comes to longevity, Elyria is the only fire department that offers longevity from day one. All of the comparables first start the calculation of longevity after a person has completed their 5th year of employment. You do have a percentage of salary for each year of service. Most of the municipalities have some sort of formula where they lump years together. And what I've given you on this chart and in the administrative manual is basically what Elyria's would be for a firefighter at each year compared to what the average longevity is. Now we need to be careful because there are probably as many ways to calculate longevity as there are municipalities. But overwhelmingly, Elyria's program is much more generous than some of the surrounding groups. I think you need to reduce that percentage in order to remain in line with the market. I will tell you right now, if you're going to go to the firefighters and say that everybody needs to have a cut in their longevity, it ain't going to happen. And so you need to look at some sort of grandfathering clause, or X people who were hired at this date are under this methodology, and new hires or people with less than 10 years have a different methodology. Do not go into negotiations thinking that you're going to have everybody within the union gladly give that dollars up. It's just not going to happen. And I think that's an unrealistic request.